Imagine a heavy rectangular wooden case resting on a quiet table in a dimly lit room. Your hands reach out to undo the two small brass clasps. They release with a soft, dull click. You open the case, unfolding the two halves like a heavy book until the wood lies perfectly flat against the table. You are not opening a battlefield tonight. You are opening a sanctuary. You are transitioning out of the chaotic, open system of your waking life, a place where the variables are infinite, the demands are relentless, and the exhaustion is deep, and you are stepping into a closed, perfectly bounded reality, the wooden geography. Inside this wooden perimeter, the architecture is entirely predictable. There are exactly 24 tall, narrow triangles, alternating in two quiet, muted colors. They stretch across the wood, 12 on one side, 12 on the exact opposite side. They are perfectly mirrored. They are perfectly balanced. This is the geography of your rest tonight. The geometry is fixed. The perimeter is raised and secure. Nothing from the unpredictable outside world can cross the thick, protective wooden lip of this board. Your nervous system, which has spent the entire day constantly scanning the infinite horizon of tomorrow, can finally power down. The universe has been safely reduced to this single rectangular plane. There is no endless expanse to navigate here. There are only the 24 points, the smooth, polished surface of the wood, the heavy checkers, and the quiet geometric certainty that the journey you're about to take has a clearly defined beginning, a mathematically perfect middle, and an absolute inevitable end. Let the boundaries of the board become the boundaries of your mind. We are going to look at the mathematics of this space, and we are going to let the numbers carry you to sleep. Before we continue, if you like these types of deep thinking videos, please take a moment to subscribe and like so that we know that the YouTube algorithm is sharing the videos to the right people. Thanks. Mathematics of the two dice. In the very center of the wooden board, resting quietly on the smooth dividing hinge, sit two small cubes. They are perfectly symmetrical. They are marked with simple, undeniable dots, numbering from 1 to 6. When you look at these two small objects, your modern mind, conditioned by the relentless open system of your waking life, immediately perceives them as agents of chaos. You have been taught that a roll of the dice is a leap into the terrifying unknown. You believe that the moment they leave your hand, the universe fractures into an infinite number of unpredictable, dangerous possibilities. This belief is the exact reason your nervous system is vibrating with exhaustion right now. Throughout your day, you treat your future as if it is an infinitely sided die. You try to anticipate a million different scenarios. What if this happens? What if they say that? What if I fail? What if the environment suddenly changes? You burn through your precious finite cognitive capital trying to calculate a defense against a universe that you believe can produce absolutely any outcome. You are trying to hold the infinite in your mind, and your mind is breaking under the heavy, impossible weight of it. You are deeply tired because you are trying to control the uncontrollable, bracing your muscles for an impact that could come from absolutely any direction. You are fighting a war against infinite variables, but inside the heavy wooden case of the board, the mathematics offer a profound, biological rescue. Let us look at the cold, quiet truth of the two cubes. They do not contain the infinite. They are physically, absolutely bound by their geometry. There are exactly 6 faces on the first die. There are exactly 6 faces on the second die. When you multiply those two undeniable physical realities together, you do not get an endless abyss of chaos. You do not get a terrifying void of endless permutations. You get exactly 36. There are exactly 36 possible outcomes when you roll the dice. Not 37, not 100, not 1 million. Exactly 36 distinct, highly specific, mathematically contained events. A 1 and a 3, a 2 and a 5, a 4 and a 6, a double 2. You can write every single one of them down on a single, small piece of paper. You can hold the entire sum of the game's chaotic potential in the palm of your hand. Imagine the staggering physical relief of realizing that the unknown has a flaw. The chaos is not a bottomless pit. It is a shallow, perfectly mapped pool. When you understand that there are only 36 things that can possibly happen in this closed system, the hypervigilance in your brain can finally begin to power down. The threat detection center of your mind, the amygdala, which has been firing warning signals all day long, can suddenly stand down. It realizes that it does not have to prepare for everything. It only has to prepare for 36 things, and because those 36 things are a closed loop, because they are entirely known variables, the paralyzing fear of the future simply evaporates into the quiet, cool air of your bedroom. Think about the physical act of throwing the dice. You gather them in your hand. For a brief moment, you hold the potential energy of the universe, and then you let them go. In the fraction of a second when the dice are in the air, tumbling over the wooden points, bouncing against the raised edges of the board, you have absolutely zero control over them. You cannot steer them mid-flight. You cannot force them to land on a specific number through the sheer force of your willpower. The physics of gravity, momentum, and friction have completely, totally taken over. Your ego desperately wants to control that tumble. It wants to manipulate the outcome to guarantee your safety. But the math explicitly forbids it, and this prohibition is not a punishment. It is a profound, beautiful, biological gift, because if you cannot control the outcome, you are completely, fundamentally absolved of the responsibility of trying. You do not have to steer the universe tonight. You do not have to force tomorrow into the exact shape you desire. You are allowed to simply let the dice fall. You're allowed to witness the physics of the world without feeling responsible for managing every single collision. Falling asleep is the biological equivalent of letting the dice go. You have spent all day gripping the reality of your life, trying to manipulate the numbers, trying to ensure a safe, predictable outcome for yourself and the people you care about. Your hands are tired from holding on so tightly. Your mind is exhausted from the constant, desperate attempt to bend the odds in your favor. But tonight, in the soft, dark space of this room, you are allowed to open your hands. You are allowed to drop the heavy, exhausting illusion of control. Tomorrow will happen. The dice of your waking life will be rolled again when the sun comes up. But you do not have to know the outcome right now, because whatever the outcome is, it will be bounded. It will be manageable. It will be drawn from a strictly limited pool of possibilities that you have the absolute capacity to handle. The journey inward. Look closely at the surface of the wood. Painted, or perhaps carefully inlaid into the smooth background, are the 24 triangles. In the cold, objective language of the game, they are simply called points. They alternate in color, creating a striking, jagged pattern that stretches across the entirety of the closed system. If you were to trace your finger along the edge of the board, you would find that these points are numbered, but they are not numbered to measure how far you can expand. They are numbered to measure how far you have to travel to get back home. In almost every other system you interact with, the goal is outward expansion. In chess, you march your pieces outward across the grid, seeking to conquer the opponent's territory. In the open system of your career, you are taught to constantly expand your influence, reach for the furthest goals, and project your energy outward into the world. You wake up in the morning and immediately, your consciousness is violently thrown to the furthest edges of your life. You project your attention to the emails from distant time zones, to the anxieties of the coming weeks, to the complex, sprawling web of your social and professional obligations. You spend your entire day operating at the absolute outer limits of your capacity. In the mathematics of the board, this is the equivalent of living entirely on the 24 point. The 24 point is the furthest possible location from your home board. It is sitting deep inside enemy territory. It is isolated, heavily exposed, and defined by a terrifying, constant friction. When you are operating out there at the very edge of the universe, it requires massive amounts of biological capital simply to hold your ground. Your nervous system must remain hypervigilant. Your adrenal glands must constantly supply you with the energy needed to defend your position in the open chaos. You are exhausted tonight because you have spent the last 16 hours stranded on the 24 point. You have been holding the perimeter. You have been living at the very edges of your own existence. But the fundamental mathematics of backgammon are entirely, beautifully different from the mathematics of waking life. Backgammon is not a game of outward conquest. It is, at its absolute core, a game of relentless, inevitable retreat. The single, unifying objective of every single move, every single roll of the dice, and every single decision you make on this board is to bring your pieces backward. The math demands that you abandon the outer edges. It mandates that you pull your energy away from the 24-point, navigate through the chaotic outer boards, cross over the physical hinge in the center of the wood, and pull everything safely into the sanctuary of the final 6 points, the home board. Every time you roll the dice, the numbers you generate are not additions to your burden, they are subtractions from your distance. You roll a 5 and you move from the 24-point down to the 19-point. You roll a 6 and you move from the 19 down to the 13. The math is a gentle, steady countdown. It is a slow, methodical reeling in of the line. This digestional flow is profoundly soothing to a tired mind because it is the exact mathematical reflection of what your physical body desperately wants to do right now. When you lie down in the dark to sleep, your biology begins its own journey inward. Throughout the day, your heart pumped blood forcefully out to your extremities, to your hands and your feet, keeping your muscles warm and ready for action in the open system. But as the parasympathetic nervous system takes over, the blood vessels in your extremities gently dilate, releasing heat, and your core body temperature begins to drop. Your physical energy is literally retreating from the edges. It is pulling back from the surface of your skin, drawing deep into the vital organs of your core. Your body is moving off the 24-point. Your consciousness must now follow that same inward flow. You do not need to hold the perimeter tonight. You do not need to defend the outer edges of your life. The 24-point is too far away and it is entirely too cold to sleep there. You are allowed to abandon the distant anxieties. You are allowed to let go of the global problems, the future obligations, and the sprawling, exhausting web of tomorrow's demands. Imagine the sensation of lifting your awareness from those distant places and bringing it one step closer to home. Moving from the 24 to the 18. You are leaving the opponent's territory. The friction begins to lessen. The cognitive load begins to lighten. Move your awareness closer still. From the 18 down to the 12. You are entering the outer board. The noise of the world is becoming quieter. The frantic, high-stakes demands of the day are fading into the background, muffled by the distance you are putting between yourself and the edge of the system. And now, the most beautiful crossing of all. Imagine your awareness moving over the raised wooden hinge in the center of the board. You are crossing the threshold from the outer world into the inner sanctuary. You are entering the home board. The final 6 points. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. This is your core. This is the heavy, quiet center of your physical body resting on the mattress. Inside the home board, the rules of the outside world no longer apply. The perimeter is entirely secure. The journey inward is complete. You have pulled all of your scattered, exhausted energy away from the infinite and concentrated it safely inside the finite walls of this room. Notice how warm it feels in the center. Notice how little effort it takes to simply exist when your energy is not stretched across the entirety of the board. You do not have to reach outward anymore tonight. You do not have to project your mind into tomorrow. Let the countdown finish its work. Bring the pieces home. Pull your thoughts away from the edges. Draw them down into the quiet dark of your own breathing. And let the heavy, inevitable math of the retreat hold you perfectly, securely at the center of the board. Weight of the 15 checkers. When you first open the wooden case and prepare to engage with the system, you must gather your physical pieces. They are not paper. They are not weightless, abstract ideas. They are solid, thick discs, usually crafted from heavy resin, polished wood, or dense bakelite. When you hold them in your hand, they possess a distinct, undeniable gravity. They clink together with a heavy, satisfying sound. Count them as you take them out of the tray. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, exactly 15. The mathematics of the board dictate that you are responsible for exactly 15 checkers. No more, no less. This is your entire inventory. This is the absolute limit of your physical presence in the game. From the moment the first dice are thrown to the moment the case is finally closed, you will spend your entire cognitive and strategic energy managing the movement, the safety, and the progress of these 15 solid objects. In the exact starting position of the board, these 15 checkers are not neatly stacked in one safe, manageable pile. The rules deliberately scatter them. 2 are stranded all the way on the 24-point, deep in the opponent's territory. 5 are resting on the 13-point, perched precariously on the edge of the outer board. 3 are on the 8-point, and 5 are resting safely inside the home board on the 6-point. When you wake up in the morning, your consciousness perfectly mirrors this scattered, heavy setup. Your day does not begin with a single unified focus. Your day begins with your attention fractured and distributed across the jagged triangles of your life. You have 2 heavy obligations resting far away, perhaps long-term projects or distant anxieties that you know you must eventually address. You have 5 heavy tasks sitting right in the middle of your day, requiring immediate negotiation and constant movement. You have 3 relational duties and 5 personal responsibilities close to home. Every single one of these tasks, these obligations, these worries is a checker, and every single one of them has weight. Throughout the day, you must pick these heavy pieces of resin up, calculate the mathematical risk of moving them, and place them back down. Over and over and over again, you carry the weight of the email you need to send. You carry the weight of the financial decision you need to make. You carry the heavy, solid disc of navigating a difficult conversation. You pick them up and you move them forward, fighting the friction of the board, calculating the odds, and burning your finite biological energy just to keep them in motion. It is profoundly exhausting. You lie awake at night feeling a deep physical ache in your shoulders, a tightness in your chest, and a heavy sinking sensation in your mind. You feel this way because human beings are not designed to carry the weight of 15 dense, heavy obligations all at once, constantly moving them across the 24 points of a complex, open system. The cognitive load of tracking the safety and trajectory of 15 separate variables is staggering. It demands a massive amount of glucose from your prefrontal cortex. It requires your sympathetic nervous system to remain constantly engaged, always ready to protect a vulnerable piece from being hit. You feel tired because you have been doing heavy lifting, often in the dark. Your exhausted mind plays a cruel trick on you. It takes those 15 checkers and it multiplies them. It tells you that you are carrying 1,000 responsibilities. It convinces you that the weight on your chest is infinite, that your obligations are a bottomless, crushing mountain of stone. You panic because you believe you are failing to manage an impossible, endless burden. But the cold, beautifully objective mathematics of the board step in to gently correct this illusion. The weight is not infinite. The burden is mathematically bounded. You only have 15 checkers. That is the physical limit of the closed system. You may have moved them 100 times today, but the actual tangible number of things you are responsible for is strictly finite. You can count them. You can name them. And because you can count them, you can finally begin to set them down. Tonight, the rules of the biological board explicitly demand that you stop carrying the pieces. You cannot play the game while you sleep. You cannot move the checkers in the dark. The physics of rest require you to completely empty your hands. Think about the physical sensation of holding a heavy, smooth piece of bakelite. Imagine the pressure it exerts against your palm. Now, imagine simply opening your fingers. Imagine letting that solid, heavy disc slide out of your grasp and come to rest flat against the cool, quiet wood of the board. You can do this right now with the obligations of your day. Take the heaviest checker you are carrying, the primary anxiety about your work, or your future, or your finances. You have carried it far enough today. You have done the math. You have moved it as far down the board as you possibly could. It is time to set it down. Open your mental grip. Let it drop onto the mattress. It is no longer your burden to carry until the sun comes up. Take the 5 checkers of your daily chores, the minor, exhausting frictions of maintaining your life. You do not need to hold them tonight. The laundry, the dishes, the unanswered messages, they are just pieces of resin. Set them down on the wood. Let the board hold their weight. Take the remaining checkers, the social anxieties, the fears of what other people think, the pressure to perform and be perfect. They are so incredibly heavy. They are exhausting your nervous system. You do not have to hold them right now. The universe is not asking you to carry them into your sleep. Drop them, one by one. Feel the staggering, beautiful lightness that spreads through your arms and your chest as you surrender the final piece of the inventory. Your hands are completely empty. The 15 checkers are resting silently on the points, completely immobilized by the dark. The wood is strong enough to hold them. The board will keep them safe until tomorrow. You are entirely absolved of the heavy lifting. There is no weight left on your chest. There is no cognitive load left in your mind. There is only the soft, unburdened rhythm of your breathing, the quiet air in the room, and the deep, floating relief of a body that has finally, completely put its heavy burdens down. Sleep in the lightness. Rest in the empty hands. Security of the made point. In the complex, unpredictable geography of the 24 points, there is a specific physical arrangement of your heavy checkers that fundamentally alters the physics of the board. It is the creation of a made point. When you move a single piece of resin onto a triangle, it is alone. It is simply occupying space. But when you roll the dice and mathematically align a second checker to land on that exact same coordinate, something profound happens. The rules of the universe suddenly shift in your favor. Listen to the sound it makes in your mind when that second piece of heavy resin clicks against the first. A solid, resonant clack. That is the sound of a door closing. That is the sound of the heavy brass lock tumbling into place. The space is no longer just a painted triangle on the wood. It is transformed into an impenetrable, undeniable fortress. The rule book is absolute on this matter. If you have 2 or more checkers resting on a single point, that point belongs entirely to you. It becomes a sanctuary. It does not matter what the opponent rolls. They could throw a double 6. They could possess all the momentum in the world. They could be hurtling down the board with terrifying speed, fueled by perfect probability. But if their mathematical count lands them exactly on your made point, they are explicitly forbidden from entering. They bounce off. They are blocked. The threat is entirely neutralized by the simple, quiet geometry of 2 pieces resting together. Think about the sheer, exhausting vigilance required to navigate the open spaces of your waking life. When you are moving through your day, you often feel like a single exposed piece. You are constantly anticipating the friction of the world. You worry that a sudden, unpredictable event, an unexpected email, a harsh word, a financial surprise, or a sudden crisis will land exactly on your coordinate and send you spiraling backward. Your amygdala, the ancient threat detection center of your brain, is constantly scanning the horizon, calculating the probabilities of disaster, and burning through your finite energy just to keep you safe. You are tired because living in the open system requires you to constantly brace for impact. But a made point is the biological equivalent of a deep, unshakable exhale. It is the sudden, beautiful cessation of threat. In your real life, you build these sanctuaries out of mundane, necessary routines. You build a made point when you establish a firm boundary and say no to an unreasonable demand on your time. You build a made point when you take 10 quiet minutes in the morning to drink a glass of water, sitting in the stillness before looking at the chaotic open system of your phone. You build a made point when you lock your front door at night, turning the heavy deadbolt, mathematically sealing the perimeter of your home against the unpredictable variables of the outside world. These points of safety do not require massive, heroic acts to construct. They are not grand, expensive properties that require you to bankrupt your energy. They are simply the pairing of 2 small, deliberate actions. Just 2 checkers, an intention paired with a boundary, a need for rest paired with a quiet room. But once they are paired, once they click together on the board of your life, the security they provide is absolute. They form the quiet, reliable infrastructure of your survival. You do not have to fight the chaos of the world constantly. You only have to build enough made points to give your exhausted nervous system a safe place to land. And tonight, right now, as you lie in the dark, you have successfully navigated your consciousness onto the ultimate made point. Look at the physical geometry of your current reality. You are resting on the soft, predictable surface of your mattress. Your physical body is the first checker. Your deliberate choice to close your eyes, to put away the screens and to surrender to rest is the second checker. You have paired them together on this exact coordinate in time and space. Clack, the lock has tumbled. The fortress is established. The anxieties of tomorrow, the unresolved conversations of today, the infinite swirling demands of the open board, They are still out there. They are still rolling the dice. They are still moving across the wood. But they cannot land here. The mathematics of this room explicitly forbid it. Your bed is a secure triangle. The stress of your job cannot enter this space. The expectations of society cannot cross this threshold. The heavy, demanding emails and the complicated relationship dynamics are bouncing off the perimeter of this room. Even if your own anxious thoughts roll the exact number required to reach you, they cannot knock you off this point. They must pass over you. The physical laws of this biological timeout protect you completely. Feel the profound physiological relief of absolute security. Notice how the muscles in your lower back no longer need to brace against gravity. Notice how your breathing can finally slow down, becoming deep, even, and rhythmic, because there is no need to prepare for a sudden flight or a sudden fight. The hypervigilance is melting away, draining out of your muscles and sinking into the heavy sheets. You are completely, undeniably safe. You do not have to defend yourself tonight. You do not have to calculate the odds of being hit by a sudden crisis. The rules of the closed system are doing the work of protecting you. You have done the necessary labor of aligning the pieces. You have built the sanctuary. Now, all you have to do is inhabit it. Vulnerability of the Blot. In direct contrast to the heavy, unshakable security of the made point, there is another arrangement of your heavy resin checkers that fundamentally defines the emotional landscape of the board. It happens when you are forced by the numbers on the dice to move a piece forward, and it lands on a triangle completely alone. There is no second checker to pair with it. There is no heavy brass lock tumbling into place. In the cold, objective terminology of the rulebook, this single, isolated piece is called a blot. A blot is mathematically, structurally exposed. Because it does not have a partner to establish the perimeter of a made point, the rules of the universe suddenly turn against it. It becomes a target. If the opposing pieces are moving toward it, and the dice happen to roll the exact number required to land on that specific coordinate, the blot is not a fortress. It is a casualty. The opponent's piece will crash into it, strike it, and send it entirely off the board, banishing it to the raised wooden partition in the center. When you leave a blot, your human nervous system immediately registers a spike of pure, undeniable anxiety. You look down at that single piece of wood or resin, sitting unprotected on the jagged triangle, and you feel a sudden, sharp tightening in your chest. You begin to frantically calculate the distances. You count the spaces between your lonely checker and the approaching threats. You desperately multiply the probabilities of your opponent rolling a 3 or a 5 or whatever exact number will spell your disaster. Your sympathetic nervous system floods your bloodstream with adrenaline, preparing you for an impact that you are completely powerless to stop. You are entirely at the mercy of the tumbling cubes. This terrifying, exposed sensation is not confined to the wooden box. It is the exact same sensation you experience every single day in the open system of your life. You live in a modern culture that idolizes the made point. You are constantly instructed to be perfectly defended, perfectly prepared, and entirely unassailable. You are taught that vulnerability is a weakness, a flaw in your armor that the world will inevitably exploit. And so, when you are forced to be a blot in your waking life, the biological panic is profound. You become a blot when you send a difficult, honest email and have to wait hours for the reply. You are a blot when you speak up in a crowded room, exposing your unpolished thoughts to the unpredictable judgment of others. You are a blot when you try a new skill, when you open your heart to a new relationship, or when you simply admit that you do not know the answer to a problem. You stand there alone on the point, feeling completely uncovered, terrified that the chaotic dice of the universe will roll exactly the wrong number and strike you down. You would lie awake at night because your brain is obsessively reviewing the blots you left behind today. You stare into the dark, cringing at the awkward conversation, agonizing over the slight misstep at work, carrying the heavy, exhausting shame of your own exposure. You feel as though you have made a terrible strategic error simply by being human. You believe you should have stayed perfectly safe. You believe you should never have left a piece unprotected. But the beautiful, flawless mathematics of the closed system offer you a breathtaking absolution. Let us look at the absolute truth of the board. It is mathematically, physically, and completely impossible to play the game without leaving a blot. You have 15 heavy checkers, and you must move them across 24 points of friction. The numbers on the dice are entirely outside of your control. If you refuse to ever leave a checker exposed, if you insist on only moving when you can guarantee a perfect paired fortress, your game will instantly paralyze. You will stack your pieces in towering, immovable piles. You will become completely stagnant. The only way to bring your pieces home, the only way to advance through the system, is to accept the mathematical necessity of stepping out alone. Leaving a blot is not a mistake. It is not a failure of your strategy, and it is not a flaw in your character. Vulnerability is a mandatory structural requirement of forward momentum. When you understand this, the crushing weight of your daily embarrassments and exposures can finally evaporate. You did not fail today because you felt vulnerable. You did not make a mistake when you spoke up, or tried, or stumbled. You simply moved. You rolled the dice, and you advanced your piece exactly as the universe required you to do. The exposure was the unavoidable cost of participating in the open system of your life. And now the most comforting truth of the night: the open system is paused. Look at the heavy velvet darkness of your bedroom. Listen to the deep, profound silence. The opponent is not rolling the dice right now. The chaotic universe is not tumbling the cubes. The board is completely, beautifully frozen. Any blots you left out in the world today are perfectly safe in the suspended animation. No one is coming to strike them while you sleep. The emails, the judgments, the risks, and the unpolished moments are all frozen exactly where they are, held motionless by the absolute boundary of the night. You do not have to calculate the distance to the threat anymore. You do not have to brace for the impact. Feel the physical relief of dropping your defenses. Your body has spent the entire day braced like a shield, tightly wound to protect your vulnerable pieces from the friction of the world. But the friction has stopped. You can let the shield down. Notice how your shoulders, which have been drawn up toward your ears in a posture of protection, can finally melt down into the mattress. Notice how the muscles around your ribs can soften, allowing your lungs to take in a slow, deep, undefended breath. You are allowed to be completely exposed to the dark, because the dark is not a threat. The dark is a gentle, indifferent blanket that covers the board and suspends all movement. The math of the game requires you to be vulnerable, but the math of the night requires you to be safe. Gravity of the bar. Right in the exact center of the wooden case, separating the home board from the outer board, there is a raised physical boundary. It is the spine of the game. The hinges that allow the box to close are built into it, and it stands slightly higher than the 24 painted triangles that make up the active field of play. In the strict terminology of the rules, this dividing line is called the bar. When your single exposed checker, the vulnerable blocks we just spoke of, is struck by an opponent's piece, it is immediately removed from the jagged geometry of the points. The opponent picks it up and places it squarely on top of this raised wooden ridge. Listen to the specific, undeniable sound of that action in your mind. The sharp, aggressive clack of the strike, followed immediately by the heavy, dull thud of your piece being set down on the middle partition. When you are playing the game and your human ego is fully engaged in the desperate pursuit of winning, being sent to the bar feels like a devastating, deeply personal failure. It feels like a violent rejection. You watch the distance you work so hard to cover instantly evaporate. You were moving forward. You were making progress. You had momentum. And in a single chaotic roll of the dice, you were struck down and sent all the way back to the beginning. Your heart rate spikes with frustration. You clench your jaw. You view the bar as the ultimate punishment, a cruel penalty exacted by a hostile universe. This furious, thrashing reaction is exactly how you respond to the sudden interruptions of your waking life. You live in a culture that worships uninterrupted velocity. You are conditioned to believe that you must always be moving forward, always producing, always advancing your pieces closer to your goals. And so, when the unpredictable open system of the world rolls a number you did not anticipate and you are suddenly struck, your nervous system interprets it as a massive, unacceptable catastrophe. What does a strike look like in the waking world? It is the sudden, heavy migraine that forces you to cancel your afternoon meetings. It is the flat tire on the way to a critical appointment. It is the overwhelming wave of depressive brain fog that makes it physically impossible to open your laptop. It is the profound, immovable exhaustion that hits you at 3 in the afternoon, pulling you down into the couch when you desperately wanted to be productive. When these moments happen, you fight them. You fight the bar. You flood your system with stress hormones, angry at your own body for failing you. You drink more caffeine. You try to force your way through the illness. You berate yourself for losing your momentum. You treat your forced pause as a moral failing. But if we strip away the frantic, fragile ego and look at the bar through the cold, flawless lens of system mechanics, a breathtaking truth is revealed. The bar is not a punishment. The bar is a flawlessly designed, profoundly necessary governor on an engine that was moving entirely too fast. Let us look at the mathematics of what actually happens when your piece is resting on the bar. The rules explicitly state that while you have a checker on that raised partition, you are legally, completely forbidden from moving any other piece on the board. Your entire game is brought to a dead, undeniable halt. You cannot advance your made points. You cannot reposition your other blots. You cannot execute any complex strategies. Your friction drops instantly, mathematically, to absolute zero because the bar is raised above the 24 points. You are no longer in the traffic. You are no longer dodging the opponent's pieces. You have been physically lifted out of the chaotic, exhausting crossfire of the open board and placed on a stable, elevated plateau. The universe is looking at your biological system, recognizing that your momentum has become unsustainable, and it is forcefully intervening to save you. The migraine, the brain fog, the heavy, sinking fatigue. These are not betrayals. They are the trapdoors of your nervous system. They are the protective mechanisms of your biology reaching down, picking you up, and placing you on the bar because you refuse to stop on your own. Imagine the profound physical relief of realizing that you do not have to fight the interruption. Imagine looking at the heavy, immovable exhaustion in your bones tonight not as a failure, but as a mathematically mandated timeout. You have been placed on the bar. Your momentum has been entirely arrested. And the most beautiful part of this rule is that the cessation of movement is completely out of your hands. You are forbidden from working. You are forbidden from fixing the problems on the board. You are allowed to just sit there. Look at the physical space you are occupying right now. This bed, this mattress, is the raised wooden partition of your life. It is elevated above the floor. It is separated from the chaotic, jagged triangles of your house, your office, and your responsibilities. When you lie down here, you are officially removed from the field of play. Feel the heavy, undeniable gravity of the bar pulling you down into the sheets. There is an incredible floating peace in having your momentum taken away. It takes a massive amount of biological energy to maintain forward velocity. It takes constant, exhausting effort to keep your pieces moving. But when you are on the bar, you do not need an engine. You do not need fuel. Let the frustration of the day's setbacks dissolve into the quiet air of the room. You were hit today. You lost some progress. You were forced to stop. But look at where you are now. You are safe. You are elevated. You are completely insulated from the friction of the 24 points. The board is still down there, but you are up here, resting on the smooth, quiet wood of the center hinge. View from the middle. Let us remain here for a little while longer, resting quietly on the raised wooden partition in the exact center of the board. Notice the physical geometry of this specific space. The bar is not a playing surface. It does not contain any painted triangles. It is simply the spine of the case, the heavy brass and wood hinge that holds the two halves of the universe together. But crucially, it is elevated. It sits higher than the 24 points. When your heavy resin checker is placed here, it is lifted up, separated from the wood by a fraction of an inch. Down below, on the flat surface of the board, the game is still happening. There is a constant, exhausting friction. Checkers are sliding across the wood. The dice are clattering against the raised edges. There is traffic. There are collisions. Down there, the mathematics are aggressive, demanding, and relentless. But up here, elevated on the middle partition, The friction is exactly zero. You are touching nothing but the quiet, neutral spine of the board. In your waking life, you rarely allow yourself to experience this elevation. You spend your days entirely immersed in the trenches of the 24 points. You are eye level with your problems. And when you are eye level with a threat, it consumes your entire field of vision. Think about the anxieties that chased you through the day. A single unanswered email, a complex financial calculation, a fleeting social awkwardness, a difficult conversation. When you are standing right next to these things on the board, immersed in the open system, they look like towering, insurmountable obstacles. They block out the sun. They demand your immediate panicked attention because they seem larger than you are. You feel trapped in the maze of your own responsibilities, unable to see the way out because the walls of the triangles are so high. But when you are lifted onto the bar, your perspective fundamentally, mathematically shifts. You are granted the view from the middle. Look down at the board of your life from this elevated height. The terrifying, towering problems of your day are no longer surrounding you. They are beneath you. And from up here, hovering above the wood, you can finally see them for what they actually are. They are not monsters. They are not life or death crises. They are just small pieces of plastic and wood, resting on painted triangles. This is the profound, beautiful detachment of the liminal space. The moments just before you fall asleep are the biological equivalent of sitting on the bar as your brain waves begin to slow, shifting from the rapid, anxious beta waves of the day into the slower, rolling alpha and theta waves of the night. You are physically, neurologically hovering just above your life. You can still see the pieces of your day. You can still faintly perceive the conversations you had, the tasks you left unfinished, and the obligations waiting for you tomorrow. But you are completely untethered from them. They no longer possess the gravitational pull to hurt you. The emotional weight of the board has been stripped away by the simple mathematics of distance. From the view of the middle, a stressful meeting is just a small, neutral coordinate. An anxious thought is just a piece of resin resting quietly in the distance. Your ego, the frantic part of your mind that desperately wants to control the open system, might look down at the board right now and feel a twitch of anxiety. It sees a blot you left exposed on the 5 point. It sees a complication developing on the 18 point. It wants to reach down and intervene. It wants to fix the board before you go to sleep. It whispers that if you just think about the problem for 10 more minutes, you might solve it. But the rules of the closed system are absolute, and they are here to protect you from your own exhaustion. While you are on the bar, you are strictly, legally forbidden from touching the pieces below. There is a breathtaking relief in this mathematically mandated helplessness. You are not allowed to fix your life right now. You are not permitted to solve tomorrow's equations tonight. The universe has placed you in a timeout, and it has locked the heavy wooden door behind you. You are just an observer. You are floating above the traffic, watching the geometry of your existence from a safe, quiet, completely unreachable height. Notice how your physical body responds to this elevation. When your nervous system truly understands that it is not allowed to participate in the friction, the physical bracing begins to dissolve. The tight, defensive posture of your shoulders, which you have held all day to protect your pieces, slowly uncoils into the mattress. The tension in your jaw clamps shut against the unpredictability of the dice, gently releases. You are lying in your bed, but biologically, you are floating. You are hovering above the sheets, weightless, unburdened, and completely disengaged from the heavy gravity of the waking world. The mattress is your middle partition. It has lifted you up and out of the game, re-entering the atmosphere. Sitting on the raised wooden partition of the bar is a profound biological relief. It is a necessary mandated suspension of your exhausting forward momentum. But your human mind, conditioned by the relentless demands and pressures of the open system, knows that this suspension is temporary. The rules of the board dictate that a piece placed on the middle hinge cannot remain there forever. Eventually, before any other checker can be moved, before any other strategy can be executed, you must roll the dice and re-enter the game. You look down from your elevated height at the opponent's home board, the specific quadrant of 6 alternating triangles where you are legally required to begin your journey all over again. Points 1 through 6. This is the mathematics of re-entering the atmosphere. In your waking life, this mechanic perfectly mirrors the deep, paralyzing anxiety of starting over. It is the heavy, sinking dread you feel on a Sunday evening, anticipating the harsh friction of Monday morning. It is the fear of waking up to a new day after a period of profound exhaustion, burnout, or emotional retreat. You have been resting. You have been safely disconnected from the traffic of the 24 points, and the thought of stepping back down into the rushing, demanding, chaotic open system feels physically impossible. You wonder how you will ever generate the massive amount of biological energy required to start your engine again. You look at the crowded board of your life and you fear rejection. You worry that if you try to step back in, you will roll the dice and find that all the safe spaces are taken. You imagine bouncing off the made points of the world, failing to reintegrate, and remaining stuck on the bar, isolated, paralyzed, and left behind. This specific anxiety of re-entry is often what keeps you awake right now. You are actively resisting the deep healing rest of the middle partition because you are already exhausted by the anticipated effort of leaving it tomorrow. You are carrying the weight of tomorrow's movement before tomorrow has even arrived. But the cold, beautiful, flawlessly objective mathematics of the closed system offer a breathtaking release from this fear. Let us look at the exact physics of coming off the bar. You do not have to pry the game open with your bare hands. You do not have to use your sheer willpower to force a space to appear in the opponent's home board. You do not need to manufacture the energy of re-entry from your own depleted reserves. The rules explicitly state that you simply pick up the 2 small cubes and let them fall. That is the absolute limit of your required effort. The mathematics of probability take over from there, and the math wants you back in the game. Unless the opponent has achieved a mathematically rare and perfect brocade of all 6 triangles, a highly improbable alignment that we will discuss later, there are open coordinates waiting for you. If there is even one single open point out of the 6, the universe is actively working to pull you in. If the opponent has left 2 or 3 points open, the probability of you rolling a number that allows you to seamlessly re-enter is overwhelmingly in your favor. Out of the exactly 36 possible outcomes when the 2 dice settle on the wood, the vast majority will contain the exact coordinates you need to step safely down from the partition. The physics of the board are designed to naturally, effortlessly pull your heavy resin checker down from the bar and place it gently back onto the wood. It is a gravitational certainty. You do not have to push your way back into the atmosphere. You only have to allow yourself to fall into it. When you wake up tomorrow morning, you do not have to possess a heroic surge of adrenaline to restart your life. The simple, quiet act of opening your eyes is the rolling of the dice. The universe will provide the numbers. The morning will provide the coordinates. The gentle, inevitable momentum of the day will reach up, take you by the hand, and pull you back into the flow of the open system without requiring you to force the transition. Re-entry is a completely automated mathematical sequence. You just have to let gravity do its heavy lifting when the time comes. And the most crucial, comforting truth of all is this: the time has not come yet. You are still on the bar. The dice are resting quietly on the table, completely untouched. The opponent is not demanding that you roll them tonight. The universe is not asking you to step back into the friction of the home board right now. The anxiety of starting over belongs entirely to tomorrow, and tomorrow is a mathematical variable that simply does not exist in the closed, perfectly sealed geometry of this dark room. Feel the absolute lack of requirement in your physical body. Your legs do not need to prepare for the long, arduous journey down the 24 points. Your chest does not need to brace for the impact of the morning traffic. You are hovering in the suspended animation of the middle partition, and you are allowed to stay here, completely unbothered, for as long as the night lasts. Architecture of the prime. We have already established the deep, satisfying security of the made point. When 2 of your heavy resin checkers rest together on a single painted triangle, they lock the coordinate. They create a tiny, localized fortress. But in the sprawling 24-point geometry of the board, a single fortress is easily bypassed. The opponent simply rolls a higher number, their piece leaps gracefully over your protected triangle, and they continue their relentless march toward your home board. But what happens when you begin to align those fortresses? What happens when the chaotic tumbling of the dice allows you to build a made point, and then another directly next to it, and then a third, and a fourth? You begin to construct a wall. In the open system of your waking life, you are constantly trying to build walls. You attempt to set boundaries to protect your finite biological energy from the infinite demands of the world. You silence your phone during a meeting. That is one made point. You tell a colleague you cannot take on another project. That is a second made point. You decide not to check your emails after dinner. A third. But you still feel anxious. You still lie awake at night feeling vulnerable. Because you know that these waking boundaries are porous. They are incomplete. If a crisis is large enough, or if someone's demand is loud enough, it will simply leap over your small, carefully constructed hurdles. The opponent rolls a 5, clears your 3-point wall, and lands squarely in your delicate protected space. But the mathematics of backgammon contain a structure of absolute, undeniable perfection. It is the ultimate expression of safety in the closed system. It is called the 6 prime. A prime is a continuous, unbroken sequence of exactly 6 consecutive made points. 6 adjacent triangles, each occupied by 2 or more of your heavy checkers. When you successfully construct this architecture on the wood, the physics of the game fundamentally alter. Let us look at the flawless logic of the 6 prime. The dice used to navigate this universe possess exactly 6 faces. The maximum distance a single piece can travel on a single die is 6 spaces. Therefore, if an opponent's checker is tracked immediately behind a wall that is exactly 6 points thick, it is mathematically, physically, and absolutely impossible for them to cross it. They can rattle the dice cup all day long. They can roll double 6s. They can possess all the aggressive momentum in the waking world. It does not matter. The math explicitly forbids their passage. The 6 prime creates a biological boundary so absolute, so flawlessly sealed, that nothing can pass it. It is an impenetrable dam holding back the chaotic river of the open system. Tonight, your human nervous system desperately needs a 6 prime. And the beautiful truth is, you do not need to roll the dice to build it. You can construct it right now simply by recognizing the physical and psychological architecture of the room you are lying in. Let us build the wall together. Let us slot the 6 points one by one, separating your soft, resting body from the demands of tomorrow. Think of the physical door to your bedroom. It is closed. It is a thick, solid barrier of wood and metal, cutting you off from the rest of the house, from the street outside, from the city, and from the world. That is your first made point, 2 heavy checkers clicking into place. The physical perimeter is secured. Now, think of the darkness in the room. You have turned off the lights, the visual noise of the open system, the harsh screens, the demanding notifications, the complex visual geography of your life has been entirely erased by the heavy, velvet shadow. The darkness is your second made point. It is a visual lock. The second point is secure. Third, think of the silence. The chaotic traffic of conversations, the endless stream of information, the demands for your attention, they have all been muffled. The air is quiet. The auditory demands are suspended. The silence is your third made point. The wall is growing thicker. Fourth, consider your schedule. The calendar that dictates your movements, the clock that divides your energy into stressful, measurable fractions. They have no authority here in the dark. Time has lost its sharp edges. There are no appointments to keep at this hour. The surrender of tomorrow's schedule is your fourth made point. Fifth, recognize the profound, heavy surrender of your physical body. You are lying flat on the mattress. You are no longer bracing your muscles against the pull of gravity. You are no longer holding your posture to present a shape to the world. You have given your physical weight entirely over to the bed. This profound muscular release is your fifth made point. The wall is almost complete. And finally, the breath. Notice the slow, automated, rhythmic rising and falling of your chest. You do not have to consciously control it. Your parasympathetic nervous system has taken over, shifting your biology into its deepest state of rest and repair. This quiet, automatic breathing is the final lock. It is the sixth made point. Clack. The prime is complete. You have successfully built a continuous, unbroken wall of 6 consecutive points around your consciousness. Look at what this means for your exhaustion. Look at the absolute mathematical safety you have just engineered. The anxieties of your waking life, the fears of what might happen tomorrow, the unresolved friction of today, they are all trapped on the other side of the prime. Imagine them out there in the dark, shaking the dice, desperately trying to reach you. They roll a 4. They hit the wall of the silence and bounce back. They roll a 5. They hit the wall of the physical dark and bounce back. They can throw the cubes an infinite number of times. But because your wall is exactly 6 points thick, there is absolutely no mathematical combination that allows them to land in your space. You do not have to actively defend this wall. You do not have to push against the anxiety to keep it out. The architecture of the prime does the heavy lifting for you. The math is guarding the door. Feel the incredible, breathtaking relief of resting behind a mathematically perfect barrier. Your body can finally, completely let go of its vigilance. There is no threat that can clear the 6 prime tonight. You are entirely insulated. The world cannot reach you here. Let the heavy, flawless structure of the 6 points surround you, holding the chaos at bay and allowing you to sink safely, deeply into the untouchable sanctuary of sleep. Frustration of the blocked checker. In the previous segment, we constructed the ultimate, impenetrable architecture of safety, the 6 prime. We built a flawless wall of 6 consecutive made points to protect your resting mind, but to fully understand the deep mathematical wisdom of the board, we must now look at this exact same structure from the opposite perspective. Imagine your single heavy resin checker resting quietly on the 24-point deep in the opponent's territory. You are trying to make your way home, but directly in front of you, spanning the adjacent triangles, is a continuous, unbroken wall of the opponent's pieces, an absolute barricade. You pick up the 2 small cubes, you shake them in your hand, listening to the hollow rattle, and you let them fall against the wood. You roll a 4 and a 5. You look at the board, counting the spaces forward, and you realize that a movement of 4 lands you exactly on a blocked point. A movement of 5 lands you exactly on a blocked point. You cannot move. You pick the dice up again. You roll a 6 and a 2. Again, the math dictates that your landing coordinates are occupied by the heavy, immovable fortresses of the prime. You cannot advance a single inch. The mathematics of the board have completely, totally frozen your progress. When you encounter this exact scenario in the open system of your waking life, your human nervous system reacts with profound, agonizing frustration. You hit a wall in your career. You encounter an immovable emotional obstacle in a relationship. You face a financial barrier that you simply cannot cross. Your immediate biological instinct is to fight. You believe that if you just push harder, if you just expend more physical and mental energy, you can somehow break the laws of physics and force your way through. You spend your days throwing the dice against a locked door, exhausting your adrenaline, burning through your cognitive reserves, and thrashing against an obstacle that the universe has temporarily deemed impassable. You lie awake at night, feeling the heavy, suffocating weight of being completely stuck. In the dark, your exhausted mind interprets this lack of forward momentum as a deep, personal failure. You tell yourself that you are not smart enough, not strong enough, or not resilient enough to overcome the barrier. You feel the rising panic of a trapped organism. Your heart rate elevates as you desperately try to calculate a way over a 6 prime that explicitly, mathematically forbids your passage. But look closely at the objective reality of the wooden board. Look at the cold, beautiful logic of the closed system. The system does not ask you to break the wall. The rules of backgammon do not allow you to pick up your heavy resin checker and smash it through the opponent's made points. When you are trapped behind a prime, the game dictates a profound, mandatory surrender. You simply forfeit your movement. You pass your turn. You acknowledge that forward momentum is currently mathematically impossible, and you stop trying. There is no shame in this pause. There is no failure in being blocked by a perfect wall. It is simply a temporary condition of the geometry. And here is the most deeply comforting truth about the closed system. No wall is permanent. The opponent who built that massive, intimidating 6 prime is also bound by the relentless laws of the dice. They are forced to keep rolling. They are forced to keep moving their pieces forward, and because they must move, they will inevitably be forced to dismantle their own fortress. It is a thermodynamic certainty. Piece by piece, checker by checker, the math will slowly, inevitably degrade the barrier in front of you. The 6 prime will become a 5 prime, then a 4 prime. Gaps will begin to open. The friction will dissipate. The strategy of the block checker is never to fight. The correct, mathematically flawless strategy is to conserve your energy and wait for the universe to shift the geometry for you. When you are completely stuck in your life, the most biologically efficient decision you can make is to stop thrashing against the wood. If you cannot solve the problem today, if the barrier is truly impassable, then throwing your finite energy against it is a massive waste of your vital resources. You are allowed to stop pushing. You are allowed to accept the block. Tonight, you are lying in the dark, facing the immovable wall of tomorrow. You cannot solve tomorrow's problems right now. The barrier between this exact moment and the future is absolute. You are legally, biologically blocked from taking action. Do not fight this limitation. Do not lie awake throwing the dice of your anxiety against a door that will not open until the sun comes up. Feel the profound physical relief of surrendering to the block. Let your muscles stop pushing. Notice the tension in your jaw and your shoulders, the physical manifestation of your desperate urge to force a way forward. Let that tension dissolve into the mattress. Let your mind stop calculating the impossible equations. You do not have to break through anything tonight. You are excused from the burden of progress. The wall in front of you will dismantle itself in due time. The morning will inevitably arrive, the variables will shift, the dice will roll, and the path will naturally open. But for now, you are perfectly safely stuck in this quiet room. It is a mandated pause, a biological pause. You do not have to move. You do not have to advance your pieces. You only have to wait. Phenomenon of the double. In the quiet, predictable probability of the 36 possible outcomes, there is a specific, symmetrical event that completely alters the rhythm and the physics of the game. You pick up the heavy leather cup, you shape the 2 small cubes, listening to them rattle against the sides, and you let them tumble across the smooth surface of the wood. When they come to a complete, undeniable stop, you look down and see an exact mirror. 2 3s, 2 5s, 2 6s, a perfect, flawless double. Out of the 36 possible universes that can exist when the dice settle on the board, exactly 6 of them contain this perfect symmetry. You have a 1 in 6 chance of suddenly, dramatically shifting the mathematical momentum of your reality. In the cold, objective rulebook of the closed system, a double is rewarded with a sudden, massive influx of velocity. Normally, the universe grants you 2 basic movements per turn. You move 1 heavy resin checker the value of the first die, and you move another checker the value of the second. It is a steady, manageable, biological pace. But when the faces of the dice perfectly match, the physics of the board temporarily bend. The universe artificially multiplies your capacity. You are not granted 2 moves. You are granted exactly 4. 4 distinct heavy movements of your resin pieces. You pick them up and slide them across the alternating triangles. 1, 2, 3, 4. You cover double the distance. You cross double the territory. You consume an extraordinary amount of space in a single sustained rotation of your turn. You are suddenly moving at a blistering, highly efficient speed, bypassing the slow, methodical rhythm of the normal game. In the open system of your waking life, you know exactly what a biological double roll feels like. It is that rare, intoxicating day when everything inside your nervous system suddenly, perfectly aligns. You wake up with a sharp, unexpected spike of clear energy. The brain fog lifts. You drink a single cup of coffee, and immediately you begin to clear the heavy backlog of your life. You answer the complex emails that have been sitting untouched for a week. You navigate a difficult social interaction with flawless, unhesitating clarity. You run the errands. You clean the physical space around you. You optimize your schedule. and you solve problems at exactly twice your normal speed. You feel a massive, thrilling surge of dopamine, the neurochemical reward for hyperproductivity. You feel like you are cheating the fundamental laws of time. You are bending the hours of the day to accommodate 4 heavy moves instead of your standard 2. When you are inside the momentum of a double roll day, your ego whispers a beautiful, dangerous lie. It tells you that you have finally fixed yourself. It convinces you that you have discovered a hidden, infinite reserve of energy, and that from now on, you should be able to operate at this incredible velocity every single day. But your human biology is not an infinite machine. It is a strictly governed, heavily regulated system, and it is keeping a very precise, undeniable ledger of your expenditures. The nervous system does not view the manic energy of a double roll as a miracle. It views it as an emergency, high-interest loan of your vital biological capital. Moving 4 heavy checkers across the friction of the board requires massive amounts of glucose. It requires your adrenal glands to flood your bloodstream with cortisol to sustain the unnatural speed. It requires your heart to pump harder, your lungs to expand faster, and your prefrontal cortex to process an overwhelming amount of variables in exactly half the normal time. The human body is explicitly, structurally not designed to sustain a pace of 4 moves per turn. It is designed for the slow, methodical, sustainable rhythm of 2. This is exactly why you are feeling such a profound, heavy, bone-deep exhaustion right now. You rolled a double today. You moved 4 times. You cleared the board, you handled the crises, and you pushed your biological engine deep into the red zone of its capacity. And now, lying in the dark, you are feeling the inevitable, crushing weight of the mathematical calm-down. You feel a thick, immovable fog rolling into your brain. Your limbs feel like they are made of solid lead, pulling you down into the mattress. You might even feel a quiet, lingering vibration in your chest, the leftover adrenaline that your body has not yet finished metabolizing. Often, in the quiet of the night, you judge yourself harshly for this sudden crash. You wonder why you feel so incredibly depleted after being so capable just a few hours ago. You view your heavy, sinking exhaustion as a sudden weakness, a failure of your willpower. But the cold, beautiful math of the board completely, flawlessly absolves you of this guilt. Your exhaustion is not a weakness. It is the exact, perfectly calculated invoice for the velocity you borrowed today. You spent double the energy, you generated double the friction, and now your biological bank account is entirely, mathematically empty. You cannot roll a double and expect to feel light and unbothered afterward. The distance you covered was real. The toll it took on your physical form is an absolute, undeniable reality. Tonight, the universe is officially rescinding the rule of 4. The manic energy is completely spent. The double turn is totally, finally over. You have passed the heavy lever cup to the opponent, and your hands are entirely empty. You do not have to pick up the cubes again. You do not have to sustain the impossible, punishing speed of the waking world. Feel the staggering, profound relief of slowing down. Let the adrenaline slowly, beautifully drain out of your bloodstream, sinking away into the heavy sheets beneath you. Allow the unshakable fatigue to fully settle into your muscles. It is the biological proof that you did the heavy work. You moved the pieces. You survived the intense, demanding friction of the sprint. And now, the physics of the closed system require you to completely stop. Your heart rate is naturally returning to its baseline, leaving behind the frantic rhythm of the day. Your breathing is shallowing out, perfectly matching the quiet, still geometry of the dark room. There are no extra moves required of you here. There is no productivity left to optimize. There is only the soft, heavy, undeniable need to recover from your own velocity. Sink entirely into the crash. Let the profound exhaustion pull you deep into the safety of the mattress. The sprint is over, the math is perfectly settled, and you are completely, flawlessly allowed to rest. Exhaustion of the Pip Count. Beneath the physical wood of the board, beneath the heavy resin of the checkers, and beneath the chaotic tumbling of the 2 dice, there is an invisible, mathematical ledger that governs the entire closed system. It is a measurement of pure distance. In the precise clinical language of the game, this measurement is called the Pip Count. A pip is simply a single unit of movement. It is the distance from one painted triangle to the very next painted triangle. When you set up the board at the beginning of the journey, with your pieces scattered across the vast geography of the 24 points, your total distance from home is a very specific, undeniable number. If you were to add up the required distance for every single one of your 15 checkers to reach the end, the total is exactly 167 pips. 167 pips. 167 individual steps. 167 units of friction. To play the game with perfect, flawless strategy, your brain must constantly maintain this heavy running tally. Every single time you roll the dice and advance a piece, you must subtract that movement from the total. If you roll a 5 and a 4, your count drops by 9. You are now at 15d8. If you roll a double 3, moving 4 times, you subtract 12. You are at 146. Furthermore, you are expected to simultaneously calculate and track the exact pip count of your opponent, constantly comparing the two numbers to determine who is mathematically ahead in the race. This relentless mental arithmetic is profoundly, deeply exhausting. It requires an immense amount of cognitive capital to constantly hold these shifting variables in your working memory. Your prefrontal cortex is trapped in a permanent state of calculation, always measuring the gap between where you currently sit and where you are desperately trying to go. In the open system of your waking life, you are a prisoner of the pip count. You live in a culture that is obsessed with measuring the distance to the finish line. From the moment you wake up, your mind is running an exhausting, continuous ledger. You count the hours until your shift is over. You count the number of unread emails in your inbox, watching the number slowly tick down, only to watch it surge back up again. You count the days until the weekend. You track your steps, you track your calories, you track the exact percentage of your financial goals. You are constantly asking the universe, how much longer until I am done? This obsession with measurement creates a chronic, vibrating tension behind your eyes. It is the biological cost of constantly looking ahead, trying to pull the future into the present through the sheer force of mathematics. You believe that if you just keep tracking the numbers, you will somehow gain control over the chaotic friction of your life. But the most punishing, cruel pip count of all is the one you perform right here, in the dark, when you are trying to rest. You look at the clock on your nightstand, and your exhausted mind instantly begins the arithmetic. You calculate exactly how many hours and minutes remain until your alarm is scheduled to ring. You tell yourself, if I fall asleep right this very second, I will get exactly 6 hours and 15 minutes of rest. 10 minutes pass. You toss and turn. You recalculate. Now I will only get 6 hours and 5 minutes. You are weaponizing the math against your own biology. By constantly measuring the distance to tomorrow, you are keeping your sympathetic nervous system fully activated. You are actively preventing the deep rolling brainwaves of sleep from taking over. Because sleep requires a complete surrender of the ledger, you cannot drift into the beautiful, undefined void of rest while you are still aggressively auditing the passage of time. But the physical reality of the wooden board offers a breathtaking, absolute release from this trap. Let us look at the fundamental truth of the closed system. The checkers do not care if you count them. The heavy resin pieces do not require your constant mathematical supervision to obey the laws of physics. If you stop calculating the exact distance to the home board, the dice will still roll. The probabilities will still function. The game will still naturally, inevitably move toward its conclusion. Your obsessive measurement does not alter the speed of the universe, it only exhausts the observer. Imagine the staggering physical relief of dropping the ledger. Imagine taking that heavy, tightly bound book of mental calculations and simply letting it slide out of your hands, falling to the floor beside your bed. You do not need to know exactly how far away tomorrow is. You do not need to measure the exact volume of sleep you are about to receive. The math is completely, utterly irrelevant to the biological process of resting. The hours will pass whether you count them or not. The Earth will continue its massive, quiet rotation, bringing the sun back around to your window without requiring a single unit of mathematical effort from your tired brain. Feel the tension behind your eyes begin to loosen and dissolve. That is the physical sensation of the pip count powering down. Notice how your mind feels when it is no longer required to hold a number. It becomes incredibly light. It becomes soft and formless. expanding into the dark room like a slow, deep exhale. You are resigning from the accounting department of your own life. You are closing the spreadsheets. You are turning off the metronome that has been ticking relentlessly in the back of your skull. There are no more distances to measure tonight. There is no longer a gap between where you are and where you are supposed to be. Because in this exact moment, lying on this mattress, you have already arrived. You are exactly where the physics of the night require you to be. Safety of the golden anchor. If you look at the far side of the wooden board, deep inside the opponent's home quadrant, you will see a space that is inherently designed to be hostile. It is the territory where the opponent's pieces are naturally gathering, moving with relentless, aggressive momentum to finish their journey. For your checkers, sitting in this quadrant feels like being stranded behind enemy lines. The friction is incredibly high. The threat of being struck and sent to the middle partition is constant. But there is a specific mathematical maneuver you can execute in this dangerous territory that fundamentally neutralizes the threat. It involves moving 2 of your heavy resin pieces onto the 20-point coordinate that sits exactly 5 spaces away from the edge of the board. When you click those 2 pieces together on that specific painted triangle, you are not just making a point. You are establishing what the masters of the closed system call the golden anchor. The golden anchor is a masterpiece of biological and mathematical survival. Let us look at why it is so profoundly powerful. By securing this specific coordinate deep in the opponent's territory, you have driven a heavy immovable spike directly into the center of their momentum. Because you own this point, the opponent is mathematically forbidden from ever building a perfect 6' against you. They cannot construct an impenetrable wall, because you are already sitting on one of the foundational stones they need to build it. Furthermore, if any of your other pieces are struck and sent to the bar, the golden anchor guarantees that you will always have a safe, undeniable place to land when you roll the dice to re-enter the atmosphere. You have created a permanent, unshakable route of safety inside a chaotic, dangerous environment. In the open system of your waking life, you frequently find yourself operating in hostile territory. You walk into a stressful workplace filled with demanding voices. You navigate a complex, toxic family dynamic. You sit in a crowded, noisy commute, or you find yourself trapped in a room where the social friction is so high it makes your chest ache. Your nervous system, sensing the surrounding threats, immediately triggers a panic response. It floods your body with adrenaline, screaming at you to flee, to escape the opponent's home board entirely. But you cannot always leave. You cannot always quit the job, or walk out of the room, or instantly teleport away from the stressful environment. You are forced to remain on the board. When you cannot leave the chaos, the only biological solution is to drop a golden anchor. You do not need to control the entire environment to feel safe. You do not need to silence all the demanding voices, or fix the toxic dynamic, or magically clear the traffic. That is the exhausting illusion of the ego, the false belief that you must dominate the entire board to survive. The mathematics of the anchor prove that you only need to control a single tiny coordinate. What does a golden anchor look like in your physical body? It is the slow, deliberate, conscious rhythm of your own heartbeat. When the world is swirling around you, demanding your attention and threatening your peace, your anchor is the quiet, undeniable thud in your chest. It is the physical sensation of your feet resting flat against the floor. It is the feeling of your own breath entering and leaving your lungs. A steady, predictable tide that belongs entirely to you, no matter how loudly the opponent rolls the dice, no matter how aggressively the open system moves its pieces around you. They cannot touch the internal rhythm of your biology. You lock 2 checkers together inside your own mind. You focus entirely on the rise and fall of your stomach. Clack. The anchor is set. Once the anchor is dropped, the external chaos loses its gravitational pull. You can watch the stressful events unfold around you with a profound detached calm, knowing that you have a safe place to land. Let the emails pile up. Let the demands swirl. They are just pieces moving on the outer triangles. They cannot cross the boundary of your internal made point. You are deeply rooted in your own physiological safety, and tonight, right now, the entire physical space of your bedroom has become your golden anchor. The world outside this room is a vast, chaotic board. Tomorrow is an intimidating territory filled with variables you cannot predict and friction you cannot avoid. But you do not have to conquer tomorrow right now. You only have to occupy this one specific point in time and space. Feel the heavy, undeniable gravity of your body sinking into the mattress. This bed is the 20 point. It is the unshakable root. You have successfully navigated your consciousness away from the noise and locked it safely onto this soft, secure coordinate. The brass lock has tumbled. The fortress is established. There is an incredible, breathtaking relief in realizing that you do not have to defend the whole universe. You only have to inhabit this single, tiny fraction of it. You can let go of the need to manage the outer board. You can release the exhausting hypervigilance that has kept your muscles tight and your mind racing. Notice how the tension drains away when you finally trust the strength of the anchor. The muscles in your neck, which have been stiffly holding your head up against the demands of the day, can finally surrender their effort. The tight coil of anxiety in your stomach can begin to slowly, beautifully unravel because the threat is locked outside. You are completely, undeniably safe right here. The heavy resin of your existence is resting perfectly on the wood. The rules of the closed system protect you. The math guarantees your security. You have a permanent foothold in the dark, and nothing from the waking world can dislodge you from this rest. Chaos of the outer board. Let us move our attention away from the extreme edges of the universe, away from the deep corners of the home boards, and look directly at the vast, sprawling expanse in the middle. In the geography of the wood, this is called the outer board. It encompasses the 12 triangles that sit on either side of the raised center hinge. This is the open ocean of the game. When the match begins, your heavy resin checkers are separated from the opponent's pieces. But as the dice begin to tumble, as the numbers are generated and the pieces are forced to advance, a terrifying, mathematically inevitable phenomenon occurs. The two opposing forces must completely, physically cross paths. Your pieces are marching toward your home board, while the opponent's pieces are marching in the exact opposite direction, directly toward you. They must pass through the exact same physical space. In the mathematics of the closed system, this phase of the game generates the absolute maximum amount of friction. It is a period of peak chaos. Every single time you pick up the leather cup and throw the two cubes, you are calculating multiple overlapping vectors of threat. You must move your checkers forward. But in doing so, you step directly into the firing line of the approaching pieces. You leave a blot and you hold your breath, knowing the opponent is bearing down on you. The air above the board is thick with probability, danger, and relentless, intersecting movement. In the open system of your waking life, you know this phase of the game intimately. It is the midday rush. It is the peak friction of your afternoon, when the demands of your job, the needs of your family, and the chaotic unpredictability of the world all intersect at the exact same time. You are trying to carry your heavy responsibilities forward, but you are constantly colliding with the agendas, the emergencies, and the emotional weight of other people moving in the opposite direction. You navigate the heavy traffic on the highway. You navigate the overlapping voices in a crowded room. You navigate the frantic, rushing energy of a society that is always in motion. The cognitive load required to survive the outer board of your life is staggering. Your prefrontal cortex must constantly calculate the distances between your vulnerable pieces and the approaching threats. Your sympathetic nervous system is highly activated, flooding your bloodstream with cortisol and adrenaline, just to keep you alert enough to dodge the collisions. You are burning through your biological currency at an astonishing, unsustainable rate. By the time the sun begins to set, your mind is vibrating with the residual friction of 1,000 tiny, exhausting interactions. You lie awake in the dark, and your brain is still trying to process the chaos of the outer board. You are still feeling the phantom traffic. You are still bracing for impacts that have already happened. The beta waves in your brain are still firing rapidly, mapping out defensive strategies for conversations that ended hours ago. You judge yourself for feeling so overwhelmed, believing that you should be able to handle the rush with perfect, unbothered grace. But the cold, objective mathematics of the board tell a completely different story, and they offer a profound biological validation. It is a mathematical impossibility to cross the outer board without experiencing massive friction. Your exhaustion is not a flaw in your character. It is the correct, perfectly calibrated biological response to a chaotic environment. You are tired because the crossing is genuinely, objectively difficult. But tonight, as you lie on this quiet mattress, the physics of your reality have fundamentally shifted. Look at the position of your heavy resin checkers now. The midday rush is completely undeniably over. The opponent's pieces have passed you by. The complex overlapping vectors of threat have dissolved into the past. You have successfully navigated the vast chaotic ocean of the outer board, and you are no longer required to calculate the collisions. The traffic has cleared. The opposing army has marched entirely off your horizon. Imagine the profound, breathtaking relief of stepping out of the crossfire. You are leaving the 12 triangles of the outer board behind. You are pulling your awareness over the raised wooden hinge, leaving the high-stakes friction on the other side. Notice how the air in your bedroom feels right now. It is not rushing past you. It is perfectly, beautifully still. There are no opposing forces moving against you in the dark. There is absolutely nothing you have to dodge, nothing you have to anticipate, and nothing you have to survive. Let your nervous system finally recognize that the crossing is finished. Tell your muscles that they no longer need to brace for impact. Feel the heavy residual tension of the day's collisions slowly melting out of your shoulders. The armor you wore to survive the outer board is entirely unnecessary here. Let it slide off your chest, draining down your arms and sinking completely into the soft, heavy sheets beneath you. Your heart rate, which spent the afternoon elevated to handle the rush, can now begin its slow, methodical descent into a resting rhythm. The fast, anxious beta waves in your brain can begin to stretch out, transforming into the slow, rolling alpha waves of deep relaxation. You are entirely safe from the traffic. The outer board is empty now. The chaos has quieted. You are entering the safe, uncrowded geometry of the home stretch. Let the deep, impenetrable silence of the room replace the noise of the daytime collisions. Let the heavy stillness of your physical body replace the frantic mathematical movement of the day. You have made it through the middle. The friction has dropped to zero. You are safe. Rest in the quiet, empty space of the crossing completed, and let the deep peace of the night completely wash over you.